Hi, I'm Corey. For 5 years, I worked as the lead software developer at Pinnacle Tech Solutions, a mid-sized company specializing in custom business applications. I poured my heart into that job, regularly pulling 12-hour days to meet deadlines and keeping our biggest clients happy. Corey, my man, those quarterly numbers are looking stellar, my boss Richard Dawson said as he strolled into my office one Monday morning. He perched on the edge of my desk, something he did when he wanted something. The Anderson account is up 30% from last year. Yeah, I redesigned their entire inventory system, I replied, not looking up from my monitor. Took 3 weekends, but they're thrilled with it. Richard tapped his fingers on my desk. Say, my nephew just graduated from that coding boot camp I mentioned. Sharp kid. That's great. What was it, a 12-week course? I asked, finally looking up. Richard's smile tightened slightly. It was 16 weeks, actually, very intensive. Tyler's got a real knack for this stuff. Cool. We hiring interns soon? I returned to my screen, missing the momentary flash in Richard's eyes. Not exactly. I was thinking he might shadow some of our senior staff. Learn the ropes, you know? I nodded absently. Sure, whatever. Just don't expect me to babysit. The Mercer project is due next week. Actually, Richard stood up, his voice shifting to a more professional tone. I'd like you to set aside some time specifically for Tyler, starting tomorrow. Tomorrow? Richard, I've got 3 client meetings and… This is a priority, Corey. Company direction. His tone left no room for argument. My colleague Amina stopped by my desk later that afternoon. Her dark eyes were unusually serious. Have you heard anything, strange lately? She asked quietly, glancing toward Richard's office. Like what? I minimized my code. Amina leaned closer. Marcus in accounting overheard Richard talking to HR about restructuring your department. I laughed. We just landed 2 major contracts. If anything, we need to expand. Corey, he specifically mentioned your position. Amina's voice dropped to a whisper. And something about family obligations. I frowned. That's ridiculous. I just got my performance review last month. Richard said I was exceeding expectations. Just watch your back, okay? Something feels off. The next day, Tyler appeared at my desk, fresh-faced, wearing an expensive suit that screamed, "My parents bought this," and sporting a confident smile that hadn't yet been earned. Hey, Uncle Rich said I should stick with you today. I'm Tyler, by the way. Corey, I replied curtly. I've got client calls all morning, so just observe quietly. Over the next 2 weeks, Tyler shadowed me constantly, asking basic questions and taking notes on everything I did. Richard kept pushing me to share more insights and really mentor him. Then came that Friday. Sandra from HR called me into a conference room where Richard was already waiting, face solemn. Corey, there's no easy way to say this, Sandra began, not quite meeting my eyes. We're eliminating your position effective immediately. Eliminating my… What? We just signed the Mercer deal. I'm in the middle of 3 major projects. Richard cleared his throat. The company is moving in a different direction. We're focusing on bringing in fresh talent with updated skill sets. Fresh talent? I've been leading the innovation here for 5 years. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You'll receive 2 weeks severance, Sandra continued mechanically. But we'd like you to stay on as a consultant for a month to ensure a smooth transition. Richard finally looked at me directly. Tyler will be taking over your projects. We need you to train him before you go. He actually expects you to train your replacement? After firing you for his nephew? Amina's voice rose indignantly across the table at Barney's, the bar 2 blocks from Pinnacle, where we often went after work. Yep. I took a long sip of my beer, said it was professional courtesy and that he'd give me a glowing recommendation if I played ball. Marcus from accounting shook his head, his usual cheerful face grim. That's beyond shady, man. Has to violate some kind of labor law. The severance agreement they want me to sign has a clause saying I can't sue them, I said. Sandra slipped it in like I wouldn't notice. Don't sign anything, said Jen from legal, who had joined us after hearing what happened. At least not yet. What choice do I have? I asked. I need that severance to cover rent until I find another job. Jen leaned forward. Corey, what Richard's doing sounds like textbook wrongful termination. Firing a top performer to hire an unqualified relative? That's nepotism. But can I prove it? I asked. Did he ever put anything in writing about Tyler taking your position? Jen asked. I thought for a moment. No, but wait. He sent me several emails about transitioning my knowledge to Tyler specifically. That's something, Jen nodded. What about performance reviews? All stellar. I've got copies at home. Good. What about witnesses? Anyone else hear Richard talking about his plans? Marcus raised his hand. I overheard him telling someone on the phone that he finally found a way to get Tyler in at a senior level about 3 weeks ago. Thought it was weird at the time. Amina nodded. And he told me directly that Tyler was the future of the company when I questioned why he was shadowing you so much. This is all circumstantial, came a voice from behind me. It was Derek, our project manager, who had just arrived. Richard's too smart to leave an obvious trail. I turned to face him. Whose side are you on, Derek? I'm just being realistic, he said, sliding into the booth. Richard is friends with half the board. Tyler's father is a major investor. They'll close ranks. So I should just roll over? Let them steal my job and my projects? My voice rose. I'm saying pick your battles, Derek countered. Take the severance, get a good reference, move on. The tech market is hot right now. That's easy for you to say, I snapped. You didn't just lose your job to some kid who can barely write a Hello World program. Hey, Tyler's actually pretty. If you finish that sentence with talented, I swear to God, Derek, Amina warned. Derek raised his hands defensively. Look, I'm just saying Richard holds all the cards here. Maybe not all of them, Jen interjected thoughtfully. Corey, didn't you just renew the Anderson contract? The one you mentioned increased 30%? I nodded slowly. Yeah, they specifically requested me to handle their account in the new contract. It's their biggest condition. And does Richard know that? A smile slowly spread across my face. No, the final paperwork came in yesterday. I was going to tell him on Monday. Jen's eyes gleamed. So what would happen if Anderson found out you were let go? They'd probably walk. They've had bad experiences with other developers. That's leverage, Marcus said, catching on. But is it enough? It might be, I said, especially combined with everything else, but I need more. The Mercer project, Amina said suddenly. Didn't you document everything with detailed notes, including all the custom code? Of course, it's company policy. But where are those notes stored? She pressed. I grinned as realization dawned. On my personal development server. I always keep backups there until projects are complete. So essentially, Jen summarized, without you, they lose Anderson, can't complete Mercer on time, and Tyler doesn't have the skills to pick up where you left off. Not without months of training, I confirmed. Derek looked uncomfortable. You guys are talking about sabotage now. That could backfire badly. Not sabotage, Jen corrected. Strategic negotiation. And I have an idea how to approach it. You wanted to see me? Richard said as he entered the conference room Monday morning, surprise evident on his face. He hadn't expected me to actually show up. Yes, thanks for coming, I replied calmly, gesturing to the chair across from me. I've been thinking about our transition plan. Tyler entered behind his uncle wearing what he probably thought was a sympathetic expression. Hey, Corey, really sorry about all this, man. Are you? I asked mildly. Richard cleared his throat. Let's keep this professional. You mentioned you had some concerns about the knowledge transfer timeline. Not concerns, clarifications. I slid a document across the table. This is my counter-proposal for my departure. Richard frowned as he scanned the paper. 6 months severance, consulting fees at double your current rate. This is absurd. Is it? I asked. I just got off the phone with James Anderson. He was quite shocked to hear I was leaving. Richard's face paled slightly. You contacted Anderson? That was inappropriate and unprofessional. Actually, he contacted me about phase 2 of their project. Imagine his surprise when I told him I wouldn't be handling it. You had no right, Richard began. I had every right as the account manager, I cut in. Just like I had every right to maintain my development documentation on secure servers until project completion, per our standard protocols. Tyler looked confused. What documentation? All the custom code, API interfaces, and integration notes for the Mercer project, I explained. The project due in 3 days that you're supposedly taking over. Those are company materials, Richard said, his voice hardening. You're required to turn everything over immediately. And I will, once we agree to reasonable terms. I leaned forward. See, I've spoken with an attorney. What you're doing here has a name, wrongful termination, motivated by nepotism. That's ridiculous. Richard stood up. Tyler was hired based on merit. Really? Did you post my job internally before offering it to him? Interview any other candidates? Check references from his previous jobs? Oh, wait, he doesn't have any, does he? Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Rich, maybe we should— Be quiet, Tyler, Richard snapped before turning back to me. You're making serious accusations without evidence. The door opened, and Amina entered with Marcus. Actually, he has witnesses, Amina said. Several of us, Marcus added, including your conversation with Mr. Mercer where you promised him Corey would personally oversee his project. This is insubordination, Richard sputtered, his face reddening. All of you are risking your positions. Is that a threat? I asked calmly, turning on my phone's recorder. Because threatening employees for reporting potentially illegal workplace practices would constitute retaliation. Would you like to clarify that statement for the record? Richard stared at my phone, then at the faces around him. He lowered his voice dangerously. You think you're clever, don't you? Do you really want to make an enemy of me in this industry? I know people, Corey, important people. One call from me and you'll be unhirable in this city. Are you threatening to blacklist me now? I asked, making sure the recorder caught every word. That would be another illegal action to add to the list. Richard slammed his hand on the table. You ungrateful little— After everything I've done for you. Like what? Taking credit for my work with the board? Or maybe you mean firing me to give my job to your unqualified nephew? You're dead in this industry, Richard hissed, pointing at me. Do you hear me? Dead. No one crosses me like this. Mr. Patterson, could you describe the events leading up to your termination one more time for the record? Asked Barbara Reynolds, the Department of Labor investigator, her pen poised over her notepad. We sat in a conference room at the Regional Labor Board office 3 weeks after my confrontation with Richard. Jen sat beside me as my unofficial advisor. Certainly, I replied, recounting the sequence of events while Barbara took detailed notes. And you have the recording of Mr. Dawson threatening to blacklist you? She asked. Yes, along with emails documenting the transition to his nephew, performance reviews showing my excellent work history, and witness statements from colleagues. Barbara nodded. Mr. Dawson's attorney has requested a meeting to discuss a settlement. They're waiting in the other conference room if you're amenable. I am, I replied. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Richard and his lawyer, a stern-faced woman in an expensive suit. Richard wouldn't meet my eyes. My client is prepared to offer 6 months severance and a neutral reference, the lawyer began. Not enough, Jen replied immediately. Given the recorded threats and clear evidence of nepotism, we're prepared to pursue this to a public hearing. 8 months then, the lawyer countered, and we'll add a non-disparagement clause. 12 months severance, a positive reference letter drafted by Corey for Richard's signature, and Mr. Dawson takes workplace ethics training, Jen stated firmly, or we proceed with both the labor complaint and a civil suit. Richard finally looked up. This is extortion. No, Richard, I said calmly. This is accountability. After 30 tense minutes of negotiation, Richard's lawyer asked to speak with him privately. When they returned, she announced they would accept our terms. As papers were being prepared, Richard leaned toward me. This isn't how I wanted things to end, Corey. We worked well together for years. Until you decided your nephew deserved my job more than I did. Business is complicated sometimes, he muttered. Family pressures, investor relations. I was in a tough position. I just stared at him until he looked away. Look, once this blows over, maybe we could grab lunch sometime? I've got other contacts, could put in a good word. No, I said simply. We're done, Richard, completely done. After signing the paperwork, I walked out of the building with Jen. How does it feel? She asked as we stepped into the sunshine. Bittersweet, I admitted. I love that job. I know, but check your phone. I pulled it out to find 3 missed calls and several messages, all from tech companies wanting to set up interviews. How? Amina might have mentioned to some recruiters that you were suddenly available, Jen grinned. Turns out your reputation speaks for itself. 2 months later, I sat in the break room of Vantage Systems, my new employer, chatting with my team about the successful launch of our latest project. Hey, did you guys see this? Asked Miguel, my new colleague, holding up his tablet. It was a business news article about Pinnacle Tech Solutions. The headline read, Tech firm loses major clients after leadership shakeup. Apparently they couldn't deliver on some big project deadlines, Miguel continued. Stocks down 30%. That's a shame, I said, not bothering to hide my smile. You used to work there, right? Asked Sasha, another developer. What happened? Let's just say, I replied, leaning back in my chair, that some people learn the hard way that experience actually matters in this industry. And nepotism doesn't pay? Miguel suggested with a knowing grin. Exactly. Now who's ready to tackle phase 2 of the Anderson project? They just signed with us yesterday. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to stand up to a boss who crossed the line? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more workplace stories.